Victoria Hale stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her penthouse office, staring down at the city 40 stories below. At 30 years old, she controlled assets worth $3 billion. She'd built an empire from calculated risks and ruthless precision. She could buy anything, influence anyone, command respect with a single glance. But when her phone lit up with a simple text, "I saw you today. Really saw you." From a freelance designer she'd met only once, her hands trembled. For the first time in a decade, someone had gotten past every wall she'd built, and she had no idea what to do about it. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Now, let's continue. Lucas Reed learned early that survival meant keeping things simple. Bills got paid on time. Meals showed up on the table. Bedtime was 8:30, no exceptions. His daughter Emma, 6 years old with her mother's stubborn chin and his own dark eyes, thrived on routine the way some kids thrived on sugar. So Lucas gave her routine. School pickup at 3:15, homework before cartoons. Pancakes every Sunday morning, even when he was running on 4 hours of sleep and his design deadline had been yesterday. It wasn't the life he'd imagined at 32. Most nights, after Emma finally fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, Lucas sat at his kitchen table in their cramped Seattle apartment and wondered where the ambitious version of himself had gone. The one who'd planned to open his own studio by 25, who'd sketched bold visions of architectural innovation on napkins during college. That guy had disappeared somewhere between the pregnancy scare that became a pregnancy, the girlfriend who decided motherhood wasn't for her 3 months after Emma was born, and the relentless grind of freelance work that paid enough to keep them afloat, but never quite enough to get ahead. He didn't resent it. Not exactly. Emma was the best thing that ever happened to him, even when she spilled juice on his laptop or asked why they couldn't go to Disneyland like her friend Mia. But some mornings, staring at his reflection while brushing his teeth, Lucas barely recognized himself. Just a tired dad in a wrinkled t-shirt, beard growing and patchy because he kept forgetting to shave, eyes that looked older than they should. His best friend Marcus said he needed to get out more. "You're turning into a hermit, man. When's the last time you had a conversation with someone over 3 feet tall that wasn't about work?" Lucas had laughed it off. "I talk to clients all the time. That doesn't count. I mean real conversation, with a real person, maybe even a woman. I've got Emma. That's enough." Marcus had given him that look, the one that said he disagreed but wasn't going to push it. Marcus had always been the social one, the guy who threw parties and knew everyone's business and somehow made success look effortless. He ran a boutique marketing firm downtown, drove a Tesla, wore designer jeans without looking like he was trying too hard. They'd been friends since college, back when Lucas still thought he'd be the one with the Tesla someday. "Just come by Saturday," Marcus had said. "I'm having some people over, nothing crazy. Bring Emma if you want." Lucas almost said no. Saturday was errands day. Groceries, laundry, the deep cleaning he never got to during the week. But Emma had a birthday party that afternoon, and Marcus's house was only 20 minutes from there. He could drop her off, swing by for an hour, pick her up on the way home. Easy. He should have known nothing with Marcus was ever that simple. The house sat in Madison Park, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than Lucas's car. Emma had been thrilled to go to Sophie's party. Sophie's parents had rented a bounce house shaped like a castle, so Lucas drove over to Marcus's place alone, already planning his exit strategy. 1 drink, maybe 2. Then he'd make an excuse about picking Emma up early. Marcus opened the door wearing what looked like a casual outfit, but probably cost $600. "You actually came. I'm shocked." "I can leave if you want." "Get in here." Marcus pulled him inside where a dozen people stood around talking with the kind of relaxed confidence that came from never worrying about rent. Lucas recognized a few faces from Marcus's Instagram, startup founders, a local influencer, someone who'd apparently sold an app to Amazon. The kind of crowd that made Lucas feel like he'd shown up in the wrong costume. He grabbed a beer from the kitchen and tried to look occupied by examining Marcus's record collection. He was studying a vintage Coltrane album when someone said, "Are you actually interested in jazz, or are you hiding?" Lucas turned. The woman standing there was probably around his age, maybe a bit younger, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of posture that suggested she'd taken ballet as a kid. She wore simple clothes, black jeans, a cream sweater, but something about the way she carried herself suggested they weren't simple at all. "Little bit of both," Lucas said. She smiled. Not the polite networking smile he'd seen on everyone else, but something more genuine. Marcus said you were funny. Marcus talks about me? He mentioned a friend who refuses to leave his apartment. I leave my apartment. I have a kid. I stand corrected. You leave your apartment for parental obligations. Lucas found himself smiling despite the awkwardness. I'm Lucas. Victoria. They shook hands. Her grip was firm, businesslike. Up close, he noticed she had gray eyes that didn't quite match the warmth of her smile, like she was good at seeming approachable but didn't quite feel it. How do you know Marcus? He asked. We met through work. I've invested in a couple of his clients. You're in venture capital? Something like that. Before he could ask what that meant, Marcus appeared with his arm around a blonde woman Lucas vaguely recognized from Seattle magazine. Victoria, I see you've met my favorite hermit. Lucas, this is Amanda. Amanda owns that gallery in Pioneer Square. Amanda launched into a story about an installation artist who'd tried to incorporate live chickens. Victoria listened with perfect attention, nodding in the right places, asking thoughtful questions. But Lucas noticed her fingers tapping against her wine glass in a pattern that seemed almost nervous. The conversation shifted. Marcus pulled Lucas aside to show him something on his phone, some campaign idea he wanted feedback on. When Lucas looked back, Victoria was gone. He found her 20 minutes later on the back deck, standing alone by the railing. The Seattle skyline spread out below, lights flickering on as dusk settled in. Not a fan of chicken art? Lucas asked. She glanced over, and for a second he thought she might tell him to leave. Then she laughed. I think I hit my limit on networking. I hit mine about 5 minutes after I got here. Then why are you still here? Free beer, and Marcus gets offended if I leave too early. Lucas leaned against the railing beside her. What's your excuse? Same, minus the beer. She turned to face him properly. Marcus mentioned you're a designer? Freelance, mostly small clients, nothing exciting. What would be exciting? The question caught him off guard. Most people asked what he did, not what he wanted to do. I don't know, something that actually matters, I guess. Not just another logo for another startup that'll be gone in 6 months. That sounds like you hate your work. I don't hate it, it's just... He trailed off, unsure how to explain without sounding pathetic. It pays the bills. That's the saddest thing I've heard all week. What do you do when you're not investing in Marcus's clients? She hesitated. I run a private equity firm. We handle acquisitions, restructuring, growth capital. It's very boring. You don't sound bored by it. I sound practiced. She took a sip of her wine. I've given that explanation so many times it doesn't mean anything anymore. They stood in silence for a moment. Below them, a ferry moved across the dark water, its lights reflected in rippling columns. Can I ask you something weird? Victoria said. Sure. Do you ever feel like people see you as a function instead of a person? Lucas thought about the clients who called him the designer in emails, the school parents who knew him only as Emma's dad, the barista at his regular coffee shop who still asked his name after 3 years. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Like she'd been expecting a different answer and wasn't sure what to do with the one she got. I have a weird favor to ask, she said, and you can absolutely say no. Okay. I'm putting together a photography project, personal work, nothing commercial. I need someone to take a few test shots just to see if the concept works. Marcus said you used to do photography? In college. I haven't picked up a camera in years. That's fine. I just need someone who sees things differently than the professionals I've been working with. They're very good at making everything look perfect. I don't want perfect. What do you want? Honest. Lucas had no idea what that meant in the context of a photography project, but something about the way she asked made it hard to say no. When? Tomorrow? I know it's short notice. I could pay you. You don't need to pay me. I'd want to. Let's start with coffee and see if I'm even any good at this. She smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. Deal. They exchanged numbers. Lucas left shortly after, picking up Emma from the party and listening to her talk nonstop about the bounce house and cake, and how Sophie's mom said they could get pizza delivered, which was so cool. Dad, can we do that for my birthday? He was putting her to bed when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Thank you for saying yes. I wasn't sure you would. He saved the contact as Victoria and typed back. Wasn't sure I would either. Victoria. What changed your mind? He thought about that question while Emma demanded one more story, then another, then finally fell asleep mid-sentence. He thought about it while washing dishes and sorting through mail and doing all the small maintenance tasks that filled his evenings. The truth was, he didn't know. Something about the way she'd asked, or maybe something about the way she'd admitted to feeling like a function instead of a person. It was the first honest thing anyone had said to him in months. "You asked a good question," he finally wrote. "I wanted to hear more of them." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, "See you tomorrow." The next morning, Emma wanted chocolate chip pancakes instead of regular ones, which meant Lucas had to run to the store before Marcus came to pick her up for their standing Sunday park date. By the time he got to the coffee shop Victoria had suggested, some place in Ballard he'd never heard of, he was 15 minutes late and felt like he'd already run a marathon. She was sitting in the corner reading something on her phone, and when she looked up, she didn't seem annoyed at all. "Sorry," Lucas said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Kid emergency." "What kind of emergency?" "The chocolate chip kind." She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious." "Life or death, at least according to Emma." "How old is she?" 6, going on 16. He realized he was still catching his breath. "Do you have kids?" "No." Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. "Never seemed to fit with the rest of my life." A waitress came by. Lucas ordered black coffee. Victoria already had some elaborate tea situation in front of her. "So," Lucas said, "tell me about this project." Victoria pulled out a tablet and showed him a series of reference images, portraits mostly, but stripped down. No elaborate styling, no dramatic lighting, just people looking directly at the camera with expressions that ranged from vulnerable to defiant. "I want something like this," she said, "but with me." "Why?" "Why what? Why do you want photos of yourself looking vulnerable?" She set down the tablet. "Have you ever Googled me?" "No." "You should. It's enlightening." Lucas pulled out his phone and typed her name. The results loaded instantly. Victoria Hale, 30 years old. Founded Hale Capital at 25 after working for 2 years at Goldman Sachs. Currently managing $3 billion in assets. Featured in Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. Photos of her at conferences, award ceremonies, charity galas. In every single one, she looked composed, elegant, untouchable. "That's not me," she said quietly. "I mean, it is, but it's not all of me, and I'm so tired of being that person all the time." Lucas set down his phone. "What do you want to be instead?" "I don't know. That's the problem." She twisted her napkin into a tight spiral. "I had this moment last week where I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone asked what I was feeling instead of what I was thinking. Even when people try to get personal, they're always angling, trying to get close to my money or my connections or my reputation. Nobody actually wants to know me." "That sounds lonely." "It is." She looked at him. "Marcus said you're a good person. Is that true?" The question startled him. "I don't know. I try to be." "That's a better answer than most people would give." They talked for 2 hours. Lucas told her about Emma, about the strange half-life of being a single parent in a world designed for couples, about the way he sometimes felt like he was disappearing into the role and forgetting there was supposed to be a person underneath. Victoria told him about growing up with parents who measured success in zeros on a bank statement, about building a company at 25 because she wanted to prove she could, about waking up at 30 and realizing she'd won the game but forgotten why she was playing. "I have a confession," Victoria said as they were leaving. "I've been trying to do this project for 6 months. I hired 3 different photographers. Every time I looked at the test shots and hated them." "Why?" "They all made me look like me. The version of me I'm trying to get away from." "What makes you think I'll be different?" She paused on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop. "You're the first person in a long time who asked what I was feeling." Lucas didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. They scheduled the shoot for the following weekend. Victoria wanted natural light, somewhere away from the city, nothing staged. Lucas suggested Discovery Park. There were trails that overlooked the water, spots where you could disappear into trees and forget you were surrounded by urban sprawl. "I haven't been there in years," Victoria said. "It's good for getting lost." Perfect. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Lucas dropped Emma at Marcus's place. "You're going to hang out with Victoria?" "Interesting," Marcus had said with that knowing look Lucas chose to ignore. and drove to the park. Victoria was already there, sitting on a bench near the parking lot, wearing jeans and a simple jacket. No makeup that he could tell, hair down. She looked nervous. "I almost canceled 3 times," she said as he approached. "Why didn't you?" "I'm not sure." They walked into the park in silence. Lucas had his old Canon slung over his shoulder, the one he'd bought in college with money from his first real freelance job. He hadn't touched it in 3 years. It felt foreign and familiar at the same time. "Tell me if this is too weird," Victoria said as they found a clearing in the trees. "But I don't want to pose. I don't want to think about it. Just take photos while we talk." "What do you want to talk about?" "Anything real." So they talked. Lucas asked about her worst investment. She'd lost $2 million backing a medical device company that turned out to be almost complete fraud, and her best one. A small tech startup run by a single mom who'd built it in her spare time and was now worth $50 million. Victoria asked about Emma's mother, and Lucas found himself telling the truth, that she'd stuck around just long enough to realize she didn't want this life, and he couldn't blame her for leaving, but he also couldn't forgive her for walking away from their daughter. While they talked, Lucas took photos. Not the careful, composed shots he'd learned in school, just moments. Victoria looking out at the water. Victoria laughing at something he said about Emma's obsession with dinosaurs. Victoria going quiet when he asked if she had anyone she talked to about the real stuff. "No," she'd said. "Not really." When they stopped for a break, Lucas showed her a few shots on the camera's display. She stared at them for a long time. "That's what you see?" she asked. "Yeah." "I look," she trailed off. "What?" "Like a person." They kept shooting for another hour. By the time they finished, Lucas had 300 photos, and Victoria looked exhausted in a way that seemed almost relieved. "When can I see the rest?" she asked. "Give me a few days to edit." "Will you be honest about which ones are good?" "Would you want me to lie?" She smiled. "No." Lucas spent the next 3 evenings editing after Emma went to sleep. He'd forgotten how much he loved this part, finding the frame that worked, adjusting the light, discovering the shot that told the story he hadn't even known he was trying to tell. By Wednesday, he had 20 images he actually liked. He sent them to Victoria with a simple message. These are the ones that felt true. She called him at 11 that night. He almost didn't answer. Emma was asleep and he had a client deadline in the morning, but something made him pick up. "I've been staring at these for 3 hours, Victoria said. "No hello, no small talk." "And?" "I don't know how you did it." "Did what?" "Made me look like I'm not performing." Lucas leaned back in his kitchen chair. "You weren't performing. That's the whole point. I'm always performing, even when I think I'm not. Not in those photos." She was quiet for a moment. He could hear traffic in the background, the faint sound of a siren. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you agree to do this? You don't know me. You had no reason to help. You asked. That's it? You asked honestly. Most people don't." Another pause. Then, "I'd like to do this again, if you're interested." "More photos?" "No, just this. Talking. Being honest." Lucas thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. She was a billionaire. He was barely keeping his head above water. She lived in a world he'd never fit into, and he had a daughter to think about. Getting close to someone like Victoria meant complications he didn't need. "Okay," he said. "Really?" "Yeah, I'd like that." They started meeting for coffee once a week, sometimes twice. Victoria would text him random questions at odd hours. "What's the worst design decision you've ever seen?" Or, "If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?" And he'd answer honestly, then ask his own. They talked about everything except the obvious gaps between them. Money never came up. Status never came up. It was just two people learning each other's edges. Emma noticed the change. "You're smiling more, Dad." "Am I?" "Yeah, it's weird." Marcus noticed too. "You're texting someone during guys' night. That's new?" "It's nothing. Is it Victoria?" Lucas didn't answer. "Be careful, man. She's not like us." "What does that mean?" "It means her life is complicated in ways you don't understand. I'm not saying don't be friends. I'm saying know what you're getting into." But Lucas didn't know what he was getting into. He just knew that for the first time in years, he felt like someone saw him as more than a function. Not Emma's dad, not the designer, just Lucas. One Thursday evening in October, Victoria texted, Can you meet me at the park? Same spot? Lucas almost said no. It was a school night and Emma had homework, but Marcus offered to watch her for a few hours. When he got to Discovery Park, Victoria was already there, sitting on the same bench where they'd started. She looked upset. What's wrong? Lucas asked. I had a board meeting today. One of my investors asked when I was going to settle down and start a family. He said it with this tone, like everything I'd built didn't matter because I hadn't checked that box yet. Lucas sat down beside her. That's garbage. The worst part is he's not entirely wrong. I'm 30. I've built this whole empire, and I come home to an empty apartment every night. She turned to him. Do you ever feel like you made all the right moves but ended up in the wrong place? Every day? How do you deal with it? I don't know if I do. I just keep moving forward because that's what Emma needs. Victoria looked out at the water. I envy that. Having someone who needs you. It's terrifying. But it's something. They sat in silence. A jogger passed. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. I need to tell you something, Victoria said, and I need you to be honest about whether it changes things. Lucas's stomach tightened. Okay. I think I'm starting to care about you in a way that's probably not smart. The words hung in the air between them. Lucas had known this was coming, had felt it building in the way her texts came more frequently, the way she looked at him during their coffee meetings, the way he'd started looking forward to those meetings more than anything else in his week. I feel the same way, he said. That's what I was afraid of. Why afraid? She turned to face him fully. Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a person someone cares about, instead of a brand they want to be associated with. And you have a daughter. You have responsibilities. I can't be the person who makes your life more complicated. What if I want complicated? Do you? Lucas thought about Emma, about the careful balance he'd built, about all the ways this could go wrong. I think you're the first thing I've wanted for myself in 6 years, he said. Victoria's expression shifted, something between hope and fear. She reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold. I don't know how to do this, she said again. Neither do I. That should probably stop us. Probably. But neither of them moved. They sat there as the sun dropped below the horizon, hands clasped, both knowing they'd already crossed a line they couldn't uncross. When Lucas got home that night, Emma was asleep on Marcus's couch. Marcus helped carry her to the car. Everything okay? Marcus asked. I don't know yet. That's what I was afraid of. Lucas drove home through empty streets, Emma sleeping in the back seat, his mind replaying the feeling of Victoria's hand in his. He'd spent 6 years building a life based on certainty and routine. Now he was walking towards something he couldn't predict or control. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he wasn't sure if that was a mistake or the best decision he'd ever made. The texts started coming at odd hours. 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, 6:30 on a Sunday. Victoria never apologized for the timing, and Lucas never complained. Sometimes they were questions, sometimes just observations. The city looks different at night when you're not working. Or Emma would like the park near my building. There are ducks. Lucas would respond from his kitchen table, coffee going cold beside him, Emma's backpack half-packed for school. She's obsessed with ducks right now. It's all she talks about. Bring her sometime. He never did. There were lines he wasn't ready to cross yet, boundaries that felt important even as everything else started blurring. Emma's world was school and Marcus and the small circle of normalcy he'd built for her. Victoria existed somewhere else entirely, in a space he could only visit when his daughter was asleep or occupied. It felt dishonest. It also felt necessary. 3 weeks after that night at the park, Victoria invited him to lunch. Not coffee. Lunch. At a restaurant in Belltown that definitely required reservations. I can't, Lucas said over the phone. I've got a client meeting at 1. Reschedule it? Victoria, I can't just, please. Something in her voice made him stop. Not desperation exactly, but close to it. Like she was asking for more than just lunch. Okay, he said. What time? The restaurant was the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices, and the waiters moved with choreographed precision. Lucas showed up in the cleanest shirt he owned and still felt underdressed. Victoria was already seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark blazer that probably cost more than his rent. She looked tired. Bad week? He asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Bad month. She handed him a menu. Order whatever you want. Lucas glanced at the descriptions. Seared diver scallops with something foam. Duck confit with something reduction. He had no idea what half the words meant. What's good here? He asked. I don't know. I've never eaten here. Then why? Someone recommended it. One of my portfolio CEOs said it was the best spot for business lunches. She set down her menu. I hate business lunches. Then why are we here? I wanted to see you. This was the first opening in my schedule. Lucas looked at her, really looked, and saw the strain around her eyes, the way her shoulders held tension like she'd forgotten how to let it go. When's the last time you took a day off? I don't remember. That's not healthy, says the person who works until 2 in the morning. I have a kid. That's different. Is it? Victoria leaned back. You're still burning yourself down to nothing, just for different reasons. The waiter appeared. Victoria ordered something Lucas didn't catch. He pointed at a random item on the menu and hoped it wasn't terrible. When they were alone again, he said, Why did you really ask me here? I'm having dinner tomorrow night. A bunch of investors from Singapore. Very important, very boring. I need to bring someone. You want me to come to a business dinner? I want you to save me from 3 hours of small talk about market conditions. Victoria, I don't know anything about... I don't need you to know anything. I just need you to be there so I have someone real to talk to. Lucas thought about his calendar. Thursday night. Emma had a sleepover at her friend Mia's house. He'd been planning to use the evening to catch up on work, maybe sleep for more than 5 hours. What's the dress code? He asked. Relief washed over her face. Suit. I'll text you the address. The food arrived. It was good, probably great, but Lucas barely tasted it. He was too busy watching Victoria push scallops around her plate without eating, her mind clearly somewhere else. Talk to me, he said. About what? Whatever's making you look like that. She set down her fork. One of my partners wants to push me out. Not officially. We can't do anything official without triggering a dozen legal clauses. But he's been making noise about my decision-making. Says I'm too cautious lately, too focused on sustainable growth instead of quick returns. Are you? Maybe. I don't know. She rubbed her temples. I used to be so sure about everything. Buy this company, sell that one, restructure this division. Now I second-guess every move. That doesn't sound like caution. That sounds like you're tired. I am tired. I'm exhausted. And I can't show it because the second I show weakness, someone will try to take what I built. Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. She stiffened for a second, then relaxed. You don't have to perform for me, he said. I know. That's why I called you. They sat like that for a moment, hands clasped across expensive plates neither of them wanted. A businesswoman at the next table glanced over, then quickly looked away. People are staring, Victoria said. Let them. You say that like it doesn't matter. Does it? She pulled her hand back slowly. I don't know yet. The next evening, Lucas borrowed a suit from Marcus. It was slightly too big in the shoulders and too short in the sleeves, but it would have to work. He showed up at the restaurant, someplace on the waterfront with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Elliott Bay, 15 minutes early because he didn't know what else to do with his nerves. Victoria was already there, standing near the entrance in a black dress that made her look like she belonged in a different century, something about old Hollywood, elegant and untouchable. You look terrified, she said. I am terrified. Don't be. Just smile and nod. I'll handle everything else. The dinner was exactly as awful as Lucas had imagined. 8 people around a table, all talking in a language that sounded like English but wasn't. Cap tables and IRR and liquidation preferences. Victoria moved through it effortlessly, answering questions with precision, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, making everyone feel important. Lucas just tried not to spill anything. Halfway through the meal, one of the investors, a man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of watch that cost more than a car, turned to Lucas. And what do you do? I'm a designer. What kind of design? Freelance. Branding, mostly. Some web work. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Interesting. How did you and Victoria meet? Lucas glanced at Victoria, who was suddenly very focused on her wine glass. Through a mutual friend, Lucas said. Marcus Trent? Yeah, The investor nodded slowly like he was filing away information for later use. Then he turned back to Victoria and launched into a question about portfolio diversification, and Lucas was forgotten again. After dessert, some elaborate chocolate thing Lucas was too nervous to enjoy, Victoria walked him outside while the investors headed to the bar for cigars. "I'm sorry," she said. "Richard can be... It's fine. It's not fine. He was sizing you up like you were a threat. Was I wrong to come?" "No." She looked back at the restaurant, then at him. "You were the only real thing in there." They stood on the sidewalk as people walked past, caught up in their own evenings. The city hummed around them, traffic and voices and the distant sound of a ferry horn. "I should go," Lucas said. "Emma's sleepover ends at 9 tomorrow, and I need to... Come to my place." He stopped. "What?" "Just for a drink. I'm not ready to go back to being alone yet." Every rational part of Lucas's brain screamed at him to say no. It was already after 10. He had work in the morning. This was moving too fast, blurring lines that should stay clear. "Okay," he said. Victoria's apartment was everything Lucas expected and nothing like he'd imagined. Yes, it had the floor-to-ceiling windows and the designer furniture and the art that was probably worth 6 figures. But it also felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with space. No photos on the walls, no books on the shelves, no signs that anyone actually lived there. "You weren't kidding about the empty apartment thing," Lucas said. Victoria poured them both whiskey from a crystal decanter. "I'm never here long enough to make it feel like home." "Where do you feel at home?" She handed him a glass and sat on the couch, slipping off her heels. "I don't think I've felt at home anywhere since I was 12. Lucas sat beside her, close but not touching. "What happened when you were 12? My parents got divorced. Very ugly, very public. My dad tried to hide assets. My mom hired investigators. It was all over the papers." She took a long drink. "I learned pretty early that money doesn't solve problems. It just makes them more expensive." "Is that why you do what you do? The investing?" "Probably. I wanted to prove I could build something that wouldn't fall apart." She laughed without humor. "Look how that's going. You've built an incredible company. I've built a very successful company. That's not the same as incredible." "What would make it incredible?" Victoria turned to look at him. They were close enough now that he could see the flecks of blue in her gray eyes, the faint lines at the corners that suggested she smiled more than she let on. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Maybe if it felt like mine instead of something I have to defend every day." Lucas set down his glass. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why me? What do you mean?" "You could have anyone, someone from your world who understands all this. Someone without a kid in a crappy apartment and a life that's held together with duct tape. Why are you sitting here with me?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his face, her fingers light against his jaw. "Because you're the first person in 10 years who asked what I was feeling instead of what I was thinking," she said. "Because you take photos that make me look human. Because when I text you at 2 in the morning, you don't ask what I need. You just answer." She dropped her hand. "Because I think you might actually see me. And that's terrifying and necessary, and I don't know what to do about it." Lucas could feel his heart hammering. Every part of him that had learned to be careful, to think of Emma first, to avoid complications, all of it was screaming at him to slow down. But there was something else too, something he'd buried under 6 years of responsibility and exhaustion. The part of him that wanted to be wanted for himself. "I see you," he said. "I know. That's the problem." They stayed like that, close enough to feel each other breathing, both aware that whatever happened next would change everything. Lucas thought about Emma, about Marcus's warning, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then Victoria leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, just soft and careful and real. When she pulled back, her eyes were searching his face. "Is this okay?" she asked. Lucas should have said no, should have explained about boundaries and complications and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, he kissed her back. They moved slowly, like people who knew this mattered too much to rush. Victoria's hands in his hair, his fingers tracing the line of her spine through the dress. Neither of them speaking because words would mean decisions they weren't ready to make. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "I have meetings at 7, she whispered. "I need to pick up Emma at 9. So we have tonight. That's not enough." I know. But they stayed anyway. Lucas texted Marcus to ask if Emma could stay an extra few hours. Marcus replied with a single thumbs up and a string of question marks Lucas chose to ignore. Victoria changed out of her dress into an old college sweatshirt that made her look younger, more vulnerable. They sat on the couch and talked until 3 in the morning about everything except what they were doing. Lucas told her about the design project he'd turned down last year because it would have meant traveling and leaving Emma. About how sometimes he looked at his daughter and felt proud and trapped in equal measure. About the girlfriend who left and how he'd tried so hard not to blame her but couldn't quite manage it. Victoria told him about the first company she'd bought, how she'd been 26 and terrified and had to fire half the staff within a month to save it. About her mother who called once a year on her birthday and always managed to make it feel like a transaction. About waking up on her 30th birthday and realizing she had everything she'd worked for and nothing she actually wanted. Do you regret it? Lucas asked. Building all this? No, maybe. I don't know. She pulled her knees up to her chest. I regret not figuring out sooner that success and happiness aren't the same thing. You still have time. Do I? I'm 30. All my friends are married with kids. My calendar is booked 6 months out. I can't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to. You're here with me. She smiled. Yeah, I am. Lucas left at 5 in the morning when the city was still dark and empty. Victoria walked him to the door, still wearing the sweatshirt, her hair messy in a way he'd never seen before. Thank you for coming to dinner, she said. Thank you for the whiskey. Lucas? He turned back. This can't be simple, she said. You know that, right? I know. But you're still here. So are you. She kissed him once more, quick and soft. Then she closed the door, and he walked to his car in the pre-dawn quiet, feeling like he'd just made the best and worst decision of his life. Emma noticed immediately. Kids always did. You look different, Dad, she said at breakfast. Different how? I don't know. Happy, different. Lucas focused on flipping pancakes. I'm always happy? Not like this, Marcus called that afternoon. We need to talk. They met at a coffee shop near Marcus's office. He looked stressed, which was unusual. Marcus didn't do stressed. What's going on with you and Victoria? He asked. Nothing. Don't lie to me. She's been different too, distracted. She missed a conference call yesterday. Victoria doesn't miss calls. Lucas stirred his coffee. We're just friends. Friends don't look at each other the way you two do. Marcus leaned forward. Look, I'm not saying don't do this. I'm saying be careful. Victoria's life is complicated. She's got investors watching every move, competitors looking for weakness, a public image to maintain. If this goes sideways, it doesn't just affect you. You think I don't know that? I think you're lonely and she's lonely, and that's a dangerous combination. Maybe it's not about being lonely. Maybe it's about finding someone who gets it. Marcus sat back. Just promise me you're thinking about Emma in all this. I'm always thinking about Emma. I know. That's what worries me. Because sooner or later you're going to have to choose between making her life stable and making yourself happy, and that's a hell of a choice to have to make. Lucas went home and tried to work. Couldn't focus, tried to sleep, couldn't settle. Around midnight, his phone buzzed. Victoria, are you awake? Yeah. Victoria. I can't stop thinking about last night. Me neither. Victoria. Is that good or bad? Lucas stared at the question for a long time. Then he typed, I don't know yet, but I don't want to stop. Victoria. Even if it gets complicated, especially if it gets complicated. Victoria. Why? Because simple hasn't made me happy. Maybe complicated will. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, I want to see you again. When? Victoria. Tomorrow, I have a thing at the Seattle Art Museum, some fundraiser I can't skip. Come with me. Victoria, I can't just show up at a fundraiser. Victoria. Why not? Because I don't belong at those things. Victoria. You belong wherever I want you to be. Is Emma free? She's with her friend Mia. Victoria. Then you're free. I'll send you the details. The fundraiser was black tie. Lucas had to rent a tux, which felt ridiculous and necessary at the same time. When he arrived at the museum, Victoria was standing in the entrance hall wearing a dark green dress that caught the light when she moved. People swarmed around her, investors, donors, board members, all wanting a piece of her attention. She saw him, and her whole face changed. "Excuse me," she said to the group around her and walked straight to Lucas. "You came. You asked. I wasn't sure you would. I'm still not sure this is a good idea." She took his hand. "Come on, I'll show you the art." They moved through the galleries while Victoria nodded at people she knew and ignored everyone else. She stopped in front of a massive abstract painting, all sharp angles and bleeding colors. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think it looks angry." The artist was going through a divorce when he painted it. "That explains a lot." Victoria laughed, and several people turned to look. "See? This is why I need you here." Everyone else would have said something pretentious about composition and negative space. Maybe they're not wrong. Maybe. But you're honest. A waiter passed with champagne. Victoria took 2 glasses and handed one to Lucas. They wandered into a quieter gallery, this one full of photographs. "These remind me of the ones you took," Victoria said, stopping in front of a portrait of an elderly woman. "These are better." "I don't know about that. Trust me, that photographer actually knows what they're doing. So do you." She turned to face him. "You just stopped believing it." Before Lucas could respond, a voice cut through the quiet. "Victoria, I've been looking for you." It was the investor from the other night, Richard. He approached with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. "Richard," Victoria said, her tone shifting to something professional. "This is Lucas Reed. Lucas, Richard Chen." They shook hands. Richard's grip was just a touch too firm. "Reed," Richard said. "The designer, Marcus's friend." "That's me. Interesting career path. Freelance must be unpredictable." Lucas felt the judgment under the words. "It has its moments, I'm sure." Richard turned to Victoria. "I need to steal you for a moment. There are some people from Sequoia who want to talk about the biotech deal." Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of, It really can't. They're only here for another 20 minutes. Lucas could see her calculating, weighing obligations against what she wanted. He made it easy for her. "Go," he said. "I'll look at the art." "Lucas? It's fine. Really." She touched his arm briefly, then followed Richard into the crowd. Lucas watched her go, watched her transform back into the version of herself that belonged to everyone else. He spent the next 30 minutes wandering alone, feeling increasingly out of place. People glanced at him with polite curiosity. Who was he? Why was he here? Did he matter? He recognized the look. It was the same one he got at Emma's school events, the only single dad in a sea of couples. He was about to leave when Victoria found him again. "I'm sorry," she said. "That took longer than I thought." "It's okay. It's not okay. I brought you here and then abandoned you. You have responsibilities." "So do you, but you showed up anyway." She glanced around, then took his hand and pulled him toward a side exit. "Come on. Where are we going?" "Anywhere that's not here." They ended up in the sculpture garden outside, where massive metal figures loomed against the night sky. It was cold and quiet and felt like a different world from the party inside. "I hate these things," Victoria said. "All those people pretending to care about art while they network." "Then why do them?" "Because it's expected. Because if I don't show up, people start asking questions. Because this is what my life is." She sat on a bench and Lucas sat beside her. "Do you know what the worst part is? I used to enjoy it. The performance, the game. Now it just makes me tired." "What changed?" She looked at him. "You did." "That's not fair. Don't put that on me." "I'm not putting it on you. I'm just saying, before I met you, I didn't know how exhausting it was to never be myself. You showed me what it feels like to stop performing, and now I can't go back." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. Inside, through the windows, he could see the party continuing, people laughing, drinking, playing their parts. "What do you want?" he asked. "Right now? I want to leave. I want to go somewhere quiet and talk about real things. I want to forget about investors and obligations and everything except this." "We can't just leave." "Why not?" "Because people will notice." "Let them notice." She stood up. "I'm tired of living for an audience. Aren't you?" Lucas thought about all the years he'd spent being careful, making safe choices, putting everyone else first. About Emma sleeping peacefully at Mia's house, unaware that her father was standing on the edge of something that could change everything. "Yeah," he said. I am. They left through the side entrance, Victoria still in her evening gown, Lucas in his rented tux. They walked to her car, some sleek thing he didn't recognize, and she drove them to a diner in Fremont, the kind with peeling vinyl booths and coffee that came in stained mugs. The waitress didn't recognize Victoria. Nobody did. They sat in a corner booth and ordered pie and terrible coffee, and for the first time all night, Victoria looked relaxed. My mother would have a heart attack if she saw me right now, she said, cutting into apple pie. Because of the diner? Because I just walked out of a $2,000 a plate fundraiser to eat pie with someone who isn't strategically useful. Is that what I am? Not strategically useful? She smiled. You're the least strategic decision I've ever made. They talked until the diner started getting ready to close. About Victoria's college years, when she'd briefly considered teaching instead of finance. About Lucas's plans to open a studio before Emma and responsibility made them impossible. About the gap between who they thought they'd be and who they actually were. Do you regret Emma? Victoria asked. Never. But I regret not figuring out how to be her father and still be myself. Maybe you can be both. Maybe. I just don't know what that looks like yet. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. I don't know what this looks like either, but I want to find out. Lucas squeezed her fingers. Even if it's messy? Especially if it's messy. They left the diner after midnight. Victoria drove him back to his car at the museum, where the fundraiser was finally winding down. Before he got out, she kissed him, longer this time, deeper, like she was trying to memorize the feeling. Thank you for tonight, she said. For what? I barely did anything. You showed up. That's more than most people do. Lucas went home and lay awake until dawn, thinking about Victoria's hand in his, about the way she looked eating pie in a cheap diner, about the choice he knew was coming even if he wasn't ready to make it yet. His phone buzzed at 7 in the morning. Victoria. I told Richard we're seeing each other. Lucas sat up in bed. What did he say? Victoria. That I'm making a mistake, that you're a distraction I can't afford, that I'm risking everything I've built for someone who doesn't understand my world. Maybe he's right. Victoria. He's not. How do you know? Victoria. Because for the first time in 10 years, I feel like I'm building something that actually matters. Lucas stared at those words for a long time. Then he called Marcus. I need to tell you something, he said when his friend answered. I already know. How? Because I know you and I know Victoria, and I've been watching this happen for weeks. Marcus sighed. Are you sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. What about Emma? I don't know yet. I'm figuring it out. Lucas, if this blows up, it won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'm not walking away from it just because it might. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Okay, just be careful, both of you. Lucas picked up Emma from Mia's house and spent the afternoon being a normal dad. They went to the park and fed ducks and got ice cream even though it was too cold for ice cream. Emma talked about her sleepover and the movie they'd watched and how Mia's cat had thrown up on her sleeping bag. Are you listening, Dad? She asked at one point. Yeah, of course. You look far away. He focused on his daughter, her sticky fingers, her gap-toothed smile, the way she saw through him even when he tried to hide. I'm right here, he said. Promise? Promise. That night, after Emma went to bed, Lucas sat at his kitchen table and thought about promises. About the one he'd made to himself 6 years ago, to always put her first. About the one he was making now, to not disappear into being only her father. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Are you free Sunday? Depends. What did you have in mind? Victoria. I want you to meet my place properly, not just late-night drinks, real time. Victoria, that's... Victoria. I know what it means. I'm asking anyway. Lucas looked at his calendar. Sunday was usually his and Emma's day, but she'd mentioned wanting to go to a museum with Mia's family. Okay, he typed. Sunday. Victoria. Thank you for not running. Thank you for giving me a reason to stay. He set down his phone and walked to Emma's room. She was asleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight, her breathing soft and even. Lucas stood in the doorway and watched her, thinking about all the ways his choices would ripple into her life. Then he went back to the kitchen and started planning for a future that looked nothing like the one he'd imagined, but somehow felt more honest than anything he'd built before. Sunday arrived with rain hammering against Lucas's windows and Emma complaining that she couldn't find her favorite shoes. He helped her search under the couch, behind the laundry basket, finally discovering them in the bathroom where she'd apparently been playing veterinarian with her stuffed animals the night before. "Why were you operating on Mr. Rabbit in the bathroom?" Lucas asked. "It's sterile, Dad, like a real hospital." He didn't have an answer for that. By the time Mia's mom picked Emma up for their museum trip, Lucas was already running late. He texted Victoria from the car. "Traffic. Be there in 20. Victoria, take your time. I'm not going anywhere." Her building was in downtown Seattle, all glass and steel, and the kind of security that required 3 different checkpoints. The doorman knew Victoria by name and waved Lucas through with a polite nod that suggested he'd been briefed. The elevator was the kind with a mirror on every wall, which meant Lucas spent the ride up watching himself from 6 different angles, all of them showing a guy who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Victoria answered the door in jeans and a sweater, barefoot, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger. No makeup, no armor. "You look exhausted," she said. "Good morning to you, too." She smiled and pulled him inside. The apartment looked different in daylight, less sterile somehow, though still mostly empty. Rain streaked the windows, turning the city outside into an impressionist painting. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." They sat in her kitchen, which was all marble countertops and appliances that looked like they'd never been used. Victoria made coffee in a machine that probably cost more than Lucas's laptop, and it was the best coffee he'd ever tasted. "I can't serve you anything else," she admitted. "I don't actually cook." "What do you eat?" "Takeout mostly. Sometimes the office orders lunch. There's a place downstairs that delivers breakfast." "You live in a building with room service?" "It's not room service, it's just convenient." Lucas looked around the pristine kitchen. "Have you ever turned on that stove?" "Once. I set off the fire alarm trying to make tea." "How do you set off a fire alarm making tea?" "I forgot about the kettle. It melted." She said it matter-of-factly, like melting kettles was a normal occurrence. "After that, I just started ordering everything." Lucas couldn't help but laugh. Here was a woman who controlled billions of dollars, who made decisions that affected thousands of people, and she couldn't make tea without causing property damage. "What?" Victoria asked. "Nothing. It's just funny." "What is?" "You're terrifying in boardrooms, but you can't operate a stove." "I never said I was terrifying." "Marcus did." She raised an eyebrow. "What else did Marcus say?" "That you're brilliant. That you're ruthless when you need to be. That I should be careful." Lucas set down his coffee. "He's worried about both of us." "Marcus is always worried. It's his default setting." "He has a point, though. This is complicated." "I know." "Do you?" Lucas leaned forward. "Because I've been thinking about it all week. What this actually means. Where it goes. How it affects Emma." Victoria's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Have you told her about me?" "No, not yet. I don't even know what I'd say." "Does she need to know?" "Eventually, yeah. I'm not going to hide this from her." "I'm not asking you to hide it. I'm asking if we need to rush into that conversation before we even know what this is." Lucas studied her face, trying to read the tension there. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm not afraid." "Victoria." She stood up and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. "What if she hates me?" "Why would she hate you?" "Because I'm the person taking her father's attention. Because I don't know anything about kids. Because I don't fit into your life in any way that makes sense." Lucas joined her at the window. Outside, the rain was getting heavier, turning the streets below into rivers. "Emma doesn't hate people. She's 6. She thinks everyone is interesting until proven otherwise." "What if I prove otherwise?" "You won't." "You don't know that." Lucas turned her to face him. "I know you're terrified of this. I know you think you're going to mess it up. But you need to trust me when I say that Emma is the most forgiving person I've ever met. She once decided to be best friends with a kid who pushed her off the swings because she thought he seemed lonely." Victoria's mouth twitched. "That's either very sweet or concerning. Little bit of both." They stood there for a moment, rain drumming against the glass, the city muted and gray beyond. I want to meet her, Victoria said quietly. I'm just scared I'll be terrible at it. You will be terrible at it. Everyone is terrible at talking to 6-year-olds at first. They're like tiny drunk philosophers. Nothing they say makes complete sense. That's not reassuring. It's honest. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm not used to this. Used to what? Being unsure. In my work, I always know the right move, or at least I pretend to. But with you, with Emma, with all of this, I have no idea what I'm doing. Welcome to parenthood. That's the whole thing. I'm not her parent. No. But if you're going to be in my life, you're going to be in hers. That's how it works. Victoria pulled back to look at him. Is that what you want? Me in your life? Would I be here if it wasn't? I don't know. Maybe you're just lonely. Maybe I am. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Lucas thought about all the careful diplomatic answers he could give. Then he decided on the truth. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be more than just a father and a freelancer paying bills. You make me feel like myself again, and I didn't realize how much I'd missed that until I had it back. Victoria's eyes were bright. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me in years. That's depressing. Tell me about it. She kissed him then, slow and deliberate, like she was trying to prove something to both of them. When they pulled apart, she said, "Stay today. No obligations, no schedules, just stay. I have to pick up Emma at 4. Then stay until 3:30. They spent the afternoon in her apartment, mostly talking. Victoria showed him the one personal thing she kept, a box of photos from college, back when she'd had friends who weren't business connections. There was a younger version of her, laughing at a party, wearing a shirt from some band Lucas had never heard of. You looked happy, he said. I was. I didn't have any money. I was working 3 jobs to pay tuition, but I was happy. She took the photo from him. I thought once I had money I'd be happier. Turns out it doesn't work that way. What would make you happy now? She looked at him for a long moment. This, right now, this makes me happy. Around 3, Lucas's phone buzzed. Emma, texting from Mia's mom's phone. Emma, Mia's mom. Dad? The museum was so cool they had dinosaurs. Can we come here again? Lucas smiled and typed back. Anytime you want, kiddo. See you soon. Victoria read over his shoulder. She seems excited. She gets excited about everything. Last week she lost her mind over a really interesting rock. What made it interesting? I have no idea. It looked like every other rock to me. Victoria laughed, and Lucas realized he'd never heard her laugh like that before. Completely unguarded, genuine. He left at 3:30, kissing Victoria goodbye in her doorway, both of them pretending it was casual when it wasn't. On the drive to pick up Emma, his phone rang. Marcus. Hey, Lucas answered. We need to talk. I'm kind of in the middle of... Now, Lucas. It's important. There was something in Marcus's voice that made Lucas's stomach tighten. What's wrong? Not over the phone. Can you come by tonight after Emma's asleep? Marcus, you're freaking me out. Just come by, please. Lucas picked up Emma, who talked nonstop about the dinosaurs and the planetarium and how Mia's little brother threw up in the gift shop. He made her dinner, supervised homework, went through the bedtime routine on autopilot while his mind spun through worst-case scenarios. At 9, he knocked on Marcus's door. Marcus looked stressed. Actually stressed, not the performative stress he sometimes wore for sympathy. He had a beer waiting and gestured for Lucas to sit. What's going on? Lucas asked. Victoria's partner, Richard. He came to see me yesterday. Lucas's grip tightened on his beer. About what? About you. About Victoria. About what he called a concerning development in her personal life. He has no right. He thinks he does. He's worried she's making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. He wanted to know what I knew about you. What did you tell him? The truth. That you're a good guy, a good friend, a good father. That if Victoria's happy, that's her business. Marcus leaned forward. But he's not going to let this go, Lucas. He sees you as a liability. I'm not trying to interfere with her work. It doesn't matter. You exist, and that's enough for him to worry. Victoria's whole reputation is built on being focused, controlled, untouchable. A relationship complicates that narrative. So what? She's not allowed to have a personal life? Of course she is. But she's also managing billions of dollars for people who expect her to be completely dedicated. Fair or not, that's the reality. Lucas set down his beer. Why are you telling me this? Because Richard implied that if Victoria doesn't end this herself, he'll find other ways to make it difficult. For both of you. Is that a threat? I think so. He was very careful with his words, but yeah, I think it was a threat. Lucas felt something cold settle in his chest. What kind of ways? I don't know, but Richard has resources and connections and a lot of reasons to want Victoria focused solely on business. If he decides you're a problem, he can make life very complicated. Does Victoria know about this conversation? I don't know. I haven't talked to her since yesterday. Lucas stood up. I need to go. Lucas, wait. I need to talk to her. He called Victoria from his car. She answered on the first ring. Did Richard come to see you? He asked. There was a pause. When? I don't know. Recently? Did he? He stopped by my office Friday. Why? What did he say? The usual, that I've been distracted, that my judgment seems compromised, that several board members have expressed concern. Her voice was tight. He said I needed to reconsider my priorities. He went to Marcus, asking about me. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, then, when? Yesterday. He basically told Marcus I'm bad for your career. That's not his decision to make. But he's not wrong, is he? I am a distraction. I am a complication you don't need. Don't do that. Do what? Give him what he wants. He's trying to make you feel like you're the problem, so you'll remove yourself. Don't fall for it. What if he's right, though? What if I am making your life harder? My life is already hard. You're one of the few things that makes it bearable. Lucas leaned his head against the steering wheel. This is getting messy fast. I know. I don't want Emma caught in the middle of this. She won't be. I won't let that happen. You can't promise that. If Richard decides to make this public, if there are articles or gossip or whatever rich people do when they want to destroy someone, Emma goes to school, kids talk, parents talk. It could affect her. So what are you saying? That we should end this? The question hung in the air between them. Lucas thought about how easy it would be to say yes, to walk away, protect Emma, go back to the simple life he'd built. No, he said. I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Define smart. I don't know yet, but we can't pretend this doesn't have consequences. I'm not pretending. I know exactly what the consequences are. I just don't care. You should care. This is your company, your reputation. It's my life, and I get to decide who's in it. Lucas closed his eyes. I need to think. About what? About whether I'm being selfish. About whether this is fair to Emma. About whether I'm worth it? No. About whether Emma's stability is worth risking for what we have. Victoria's breath hitched. And what do we have, Lucas? He wanted to say something certain, something definitive, but the truth was messier than that. I don't know, something real, something that scares me, something I don't want to lose. But you might choose to anyway. I have a daughter. She comes first. She has to. I know. That's one of the reasons She stopped. One of the reasons you what? Nothing. Go home. Think about it. We'll talk tomorrow. She hung up before he could respond. Lucas sat in his car outside Marcus's building, rain starting to fall again, and wondered how something that felt so right could get so complicated so fast. He went home and checked on Emma. She was asleep, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit, her nightlight casting soft shadows on the wall. Lucas sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe, thinking about all the choices he'd made since she was born. Every single one had been about keeping her safe, keeping her world stable. Was he about to break that pattern for a woman he'd known 3 months? His phone buzzed. Victoria. Victoria. I'm sorry for hanging up. I just needed a minute. It's okay. Victoria. It's not okay. You're trying to be a good father, and I'm making it harder. You're not making anything harder. The situation is just complicated. Victoria. Richard called me tonight, after you called. He said he's concerned about my personal entanglements. That's the word he used. Entanglements. What did you say? Victoria. I told him my personal life is none of his business. How did he take that? Victoria. Not well. He implied there might be consequences if I don't refocus. What kind of consequences? Victoria. He wouldn't say. But I know Richard. He doesn't make empty threats. Lucas stared at his phone, anger building in his chest. This is insane. He can't control who you see. Victoria. He can make it very difficult for me professionally. He has board connections, investor relationships. If he wanted to push me out, he could build a case. Would they actually listen to him? Victoria. Maybe. If he frames it right. If he can show my decisions have been compromised. If he makes me look weak or distracted or emotional. Have your decisions been compromised? The three dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, I don't know, I've been happier. Maybe that makes me less focused, or maybe it makes me better at seeing what actually matters. What does matter? Victoria, you. Emma. Having something in my life that isn't about power or profit or performance, but I can't ask you to risk your daughter's stability for that. You're not asking, I'm choosing. Victoria. Are you? Or are you just caught up in this because it's new and exciting and different from your normal life? The question stung because part of him wondered the same thing. Was this real, or was he just desperate to be someone other than Emma's tired, broke, lonely dad? I don't know, he typed. Honestly, I know I care about you. I know I think about you constantly. I know when I'm with you, I feel like a complete person instead of just a function. But I also know I have a 6-year-old who needs me to make smart decisions, not just feel good ones. Victoria. Then make the smart decision. What if the smart decision is the one that makes me miserable? Victoria. Then you make it anyway. That's what being a parent means, right? Lucas looked at Emma, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that her father was sitting 3 feet away trying to decide between his happiness and her security. Except it wasn't that simple. It was never that simple. Can I see you tomorrow? He typed. Victoria. Is that smart? Probably not, but I need to see you. Victoria. Okay. Come to my office. 7 p.m. Everyone will be gone by then. Your office? Victoria. I want you to see it. All of it. The version of me that Richard thinks you're threatening. Maybe it'll help you decide. Lucas agreed and spent the next day in a fog, going through motions with clients and Emma, his mind elsewhere. When he dropped Emma at Marcus's for the evening, Marcus gave him a look. You sure about this? Marcus asked. No. But you're doing it anyway. Yeah. That's either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? Victoria's office was on the 42nd floor of a building in the financial district. Lucas had to sign in with security, get a visitor badge, take an elevator that moved so fast his ears popped. The floor was all glass walls and expensive furniture, and the kind of silence that came from good insulation and even better money. Victoria was waiting in her office, still in work clothes, tailored pants, silk blouse, heels that added 3 inches. She looked different here, sharper, more contained. This is where you spend your days? Lucas asked. Most of them, 12, 14 hours sometimes. She gestured to the desk, which was covered in reports and laptops, and the controlled chaos of someone managing too much. This is what Richard thinks you're threatening. Lucas walked around the office, taking in the awards on the walls, the framed articles, the photo of Victoria shaking hands with someone important at some important event. This was the version of her the world saw. Successful, powerful, complete. Do you like it? He asked. I used to. Now I'm not sure. She sat on the edge of her desk. I built this because I wanted to prove I could. That I didn't need anyone, didn't need approval, didn't need anything except my own intelligence and work ethic. And I did it. I proved it. But somewhere along the way, proving it became the whole point, and I forgot to ask if it was actually making me happy. Are you happy? When I'm here? No. When I'm with you? Yes, when I think about trying to balance both? I don't know. Lucas joined her in the desk. Richard was here when I came in. I saw him getting into the elevator. He was. We had another conversation, more pointed this time. What did he say? That the board is concerned, that investors are asking questions, that my recent performance has been, she made air quotes, inconsistent with my usual standards. Is that true? I missed a meeting last week because I was having coffee with you. I turned down a trip to New York because I wanted to be here. I've been leaving the office at reasonable hours instead of staying until midnight. So yes, I guess my behavior has changed. Is that a bad thing? According to Richard, it's a liability. According to me, it's called having a life. She looked at him. He gave me an ultimatum. Lucas felt his stomach drop. What kind of ultimatum? End the relationship, or he'll call for a board review of my position. He has enough support to make it happen. He implied they might find me no longer suited to lead the company. Can he actually do that? If he builds the right case, yes. If he frames it as me losing focus, making emotional decisions, prioritizing personal matters over fiduciary responsibility, yeah, he could get me removed. That's insane. That's business. Lucas started pacing. So what are you going to do? I don't know. If I give in, I keep the company but lose any sense of control over my own life. If I fight back, I risk everything I've built for a relationship that's 3 months old and might not even work out. Is that what you think? That we might not work out? Victoria stood and caught his hand, stopping his pacing. I think we're two people from completely different worlds trying to build something in the middle. And I think there are a lot of ways that could fall apart. But I also think you're the first person in years who makes me want to try. What does that mean? It means I'm choosing you, even if it costs me everything else. Lucas stared at her. Victoria, you can't. Yes, I can. It's my company, my choice. I'm not letting Richard or the board or anyone else dictate my personal life. But if they remove you, then they remove me. I'll start something new. I've done it before. You can't throw away everything you've built for me. I'm not throwing it away for you. I'm choosing to live my life on my own terms instead of everyone else's. You're part of that, but it's bigger than you. Lucas didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to argue, to convince her this was too big a risk. Part of him was overwhelmed that someone would choose him over an empire. What do you need from me? He finally asked. Honesty. If this is too much, if you can't handle the fallout, tell me now. I need to know if I'm doing this alone or if you're with me. Lucas thought about Emma, about the simple life he'd built, about all the safe choices he'd made to protect her. Then he thought about Victoria, standing in her office overlooking the city she'd conquered, willing to risk it all for something real. I'm with you, he said. I'm terrified and I have no idea how to make this work with Emma, and I'm probably going to mess this up in ways I can't even imagine yet. But I'm with you. Victoria kissed him, hard and desperate, like she'd been holding her breath waiting for his answer. When they pulled apart, she said, I have a board meeting in 2 days. Richard's going to make his move then. What are you going to say? The truth, that my personal life is my business, that my performance speaks for itself, that if they want to remove me for being happy, that's their choice. But I won't make it easy. You're really going to fight this? I'm really going to fight this. They left her office together, Victoria turning off lights and locking doors, Lucas watching her transform back into the public version of herself. In the elevator, surrounded by mirrors, he saw them reflected a dozen times. A billionaire and a broke single dad, unlikely and impossible, and somehow trying to make it work anyway. What do we do now? Lucas asked. Victoria took his hand. Now we wait, and hope the board is smart enough to see that my personal happiness doesn't compromise my professional judgment. And if they're not, then I start over, somewhere new, maybe even somewhere normal. You don't do normal. Maybe I could learn. They walked to the parking garage together, and Lucas tried to imagine Victoria in his world. The cramped apartment, the endless freelance hustle, the chaos of Emma's schedule. It seemed impossible. But 3 months ago, standing in Marcus's house, the idea of kissing her had seemed impossible too. I should go, Lucas said. Emma's waiting. Tell her hi from me. She doesn't know who you are yet. Then tell her hi from your friend Victoria, the one who can't cook. Lucas smiled despite everything. I'll tell her. He drove home through rain-slicked streets, his mind spinning through scenarios and outcomes and all the ways this could go wrong. When he got home, Emma was already asleep in her room, and Marcus was waiting in the living room. How did it go? Marcus asked. She's going to fight. She's refusing to end this. And you? I'm staying, even if it gets ugly. Marcus studied him for a long moment. You really care about her. Yeah, I really do. Then I hope it works out for both of you. After Marcus left, Lucas sat on his couch and tried to imagine explaining all of this to Emma, How did you tell a 6-year-old that her father's girlfriend might lose her company because they cared about each other? How did you explain that sometimes doing the right thing came with consequences? His phone buzzed. Victoria. Thank you for staying. Thank you for fighting. Victoria. I'm scared. Me too. Victoria. But we're doing this anyway? Yeah. We're doing this anyway. Lucas set down his phone and looked around his small apartment, the life he'd built from necessity and survival and single-minded focus on Emma. It wasn't much, but it was stable, safe, predictable. And he was about to risk all of it for something that might not survive the week. But as he sat there in the quiet, thinking about Victoria in her office, choosing him over everything she'd built, he realized something. For the first time in 6 years, he wasn't just surviving. He was fighting for something he wanted. And maybe that was worth the risk after all. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2. Victoria texted Lucas Wednesday night with 3 words. Victoria, I can't sleep. He called her instead of texting back. She answered immediately. Talk to me, he said. About what? Anything. What are you doing right now? Sitting on my couch, staring at my notes, going over every possible angle Richard might use tomorrow. That's not helping you sleep. I know, but I can't turn my brain off. Lucas was lying in bed, Emma asleep down the hall, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Tell me about the first company you bought. Why? Because you need to remember why you're good at this. What made you successful in the first place? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she started talking. About being 26 with a loan she could barely afford, looking at a failing manufacturing company that everyone else had written off. How she'd stayed up for 3 nights straight, analyzing their supply chain, finding inefficiencies nobody else had noticed. How she'd fired the CEO on day 2 because he was embezzling, promoted a line worker to interim management because she had more sense than anyone in the C-suite, and turned the company profitable within 8 months. I sold it for 4 times what I paid, Victoria said. Everyone told me I got lucky, but it wasn't luck. I saw what nobody else did. That's what you need to remember tomorrow. You're not lucky. You're smart. And Richard knows it. He also knows I've been distracted. Have you made any bad decisions because of me? No, but I've made fewer decisions overall. I've been more cautious. Is caution bad? In my world? Sometimes. There's a deal right now, a biotech company that's bleeding money but has promising research. Richard wants to pull out. I want to give them another quarter. The old me would have decided in 5 minutes. Now I keep second-guessing myself. What does your gut say? That the research is worth the risk. That the CEO is inexperienced but passionate. That sometimes the best investments are the ones everyone else is too scared to make. Then trust that. What if I'm wrong? Then you're wrong. But at least you made the call based on what you believe, not what Richard thinks you should do. Victoria exhaled slowly. How did you get so good at this? At what? Talking me down from my own head? Practice. I've spent 6 years convincing a small person that monsters aren't real and vegetables aren't poison. You're easier than that. She laughed, and Lucas heard some of the tension leave her voice. They talked for another hour about nothing important. Emma's latest obsession with learning to whistle, the terrible movie Victoria had tried to watch last weekend, the Thai place near Lucas's apartment that he swore made the best pad CW in Seattle. I should let you sleep, Victoria finally said. I'm not tired. Liar, I can hear it in your voice. Okay, I'm a little tired, but I'll stay up if you need me to. No, go to sleep. I'll be okay. Victoria? Yeah? You're going to be fine tomorrow. Whatever happens, you're going to be fine. Promise? I can't promise the outcome, but I can promise you're stronger than Richard gives you credit for. After they hung up, Lucas lay awake thinking about what the next day might bring. He'd already decided not to tell Emma anything yet. There was no point worrying her about something that might not even affect her. But he'd called his biggest client that afternoon and asked to push back a deadline, just in case. Just in case he needed to be available if Victoria's world fell apart. Thursday morning crawled. Lucas got Emma to school, came home, tried to work on a logo redesign that was due next week. He couldn't focus. By noon, he'd rearranged his desk 3 times, made coffee he didn't drink, and checked his phone approximately every 90 seconds. At 1:30, Victoria texted. Victoria, going in now? You've got this. Victoria, if this goes badly, I just want you to know this wasn't a mistake. You weren't a mistake. It's not going badly. And we're not past tense yet. Victoria, I'll call you after. Lucas spent the next 2 hours in agony. He picked up Emma from school and took her to the park, pushing her on the swings while his phone sat heavy in his pocket. Emma chattered about her day, something about a class pet hamster that escaped and was found in the art supplies. But Lucas only caught every third word. Dad, you're not listening, Emma said. Sorry, kiddo, I'm listening now. Are you sad? No, just thinking. About what? Lucas looked at his daughter, her small face so certain that if something was wrong, her father would fix it. Grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it about your friend? The one who can't cook? Lucas's hands tightened on the swing chains. How do you know about her? Uncle Marcus told me you have a friend who's really bad at cooking. He said she once melted a kettle. He shouldn't have told you that. Why? Is it a secret? No, it's just... Lucas stopped pushing the swing. It's complicated. Everything grown-ups do is complicated, Emma said matter-of-factly. That's why being a kid is better. Lucas couldn't argue with that logic. They stayed at the park until almost 5 when his phone finally rang. Victoria. He told Emma to play on the slide for a minute and walked far enough away that she couldn't hear. How bad is it? He asked. Victoria's voice was shaky. I still have my job. Barely. What happened? Richard made his case, said I'd been unfocused, that my decision-making had become questionable, that several key investors had expressed concerns. He had emails, meeting notes, everything documented. Lucas felt sick. And I reminded the board that under my leadership, we've averaged 22% annual returns for 5 years, that our portfolio companies have created over 15,000 jobs, that we've never had a single major loss under my management. Her voice got stronger. I told them that yes, I've been leaving the office at reasonable hours. Yes, I've been taking meetings from home occasionally. Yes, I've been less available for last-minute investor dinners. And I asked them directly, have any of those things negatively impacted our performance? What did they say? They couldn't say yes, because the answer is no. Our numbers are still strong. Our portfolio is still growing. I've just stopped killing myself to do it. So you won. Not exactly. They agreed I could stay on as managing director, but Richard is now co-director. Every major decision has to go through both of us. They called it additional oversight to ensure consistent leadership. That's bullshit. That's politics. I keep my company, but I lose autonomy. Richard gets what he wanted, control. Lucas watched Emma climb the ladder to the slide. Her coat unzipped despite the cold. I'm sorry. Don't be. This is better than I expected. Honestly, I thought they might force me out entirely. What does this mean for us? Victoria was quiet for a moment. It means Richard won this round, but it also means I still have a position to fight from, and I'm not done fighting. Victoria, maybe you should... Don't. Don't tell me this isn't worth it. Don't tell me to back down. I wasn't going to. I was going to say, maybe you should come over for dinner tonight. Emma's asking about you anyway. The silence stretched long enough that Lucas thought the call had dropped. Then Victoria said, She's asking about me? Apparently Marcus told her about the kettle incident. That's mortifying. That's Emma. She thinks it's hilarious. She wants to meet the lady who can't make tea. Lucas, I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be ready. Just be yourself. The version that melts kettles and drinks expensive whiskey and admits when she's scared, that's the version I want her to meet. What if she hates me? She won't. But if it helps, I'll make spaghetti. Nobody hates my spaghetti. Victoria laughed, but it sounded close to crying. Okay, what time? 6:30. And Victoria? Wear something you don't mind getting sauce on. Emma's not great with boundaries. Lucas told Emma on the drive home that his friend Victoria was coming for dinner. The kettle lady? Emma asked. Her name is Victoria. And yes, the one who had trouble with the kettle. Is she your girlfriend? Lucas gripped the steering wheel tighter. He'd known this question was coming, but he'd hoped for more time to figure out the answer. She's someone important to me. Someone I care about. So yes, It's more complicated than yes or no. Grown-ups always say that. Emma kicked her feet against the car seat. Does she like kids? I don't know. She hasn't spent much time around them. Then how does she know if she likes them? Good question, kiddo. Emma was quiet for a minute, then, what if she doesn't like me? Lucas pulled over, even though they were only 2 blocks from home. He turned to look at his daughter. Emma, listen to me. There is no universe where someone doesn't like you. You're smart and funny and kind, and anyone who doesn't see that isn't paying attention. But what if, no what ifs, you be yourself and she'll be herself, and we'll all just be honest, okay? Emma nodded, but Lucas could see the worry in her eyes. It was the same worry he'd seen when she'd started kindergarten, when she'd gone to her first sleepover, whenever she faced something new and uncertain. The worry that came from being 6 and having your world change without your permission. They got home and Lucas started cooking while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. He was chopping onions when she said, Dad? Yeah? If Victoria becomes your girlfriend for real, does that mean she's going to be around a lot? Maybe. Would that bother you? Emma chewed on her pencil. I don't know. Mom left because she didn't want to be around. What if Victoria leaves too? Lucas set down the knife and knelt beside her chair. Emma, Victoria is not your mom, and I'm not going to let anyone into our lives who might hurt you. That's a promise. But you can't control what people do. No. But I can control who I trust, and I trust Victoria. Even though you've only known her a little while? Even though? Emma seemed to consider this. Then she went back to her homework, and Lucas went back to cooking, and they both pretended they weren't nervous about what the next few hours might bring. Victoria arrived at 6:25, which meant she'd probably been sitting in her car working up the courage to knock. Lucas opened the door before she could. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair down, no makeup. She looked terrified. Hi, she said. Hi, come in. Victoria stepped inside, holding a bouquet of flowers that looked expensive and a bag from a bakery. I didn't know what to bring. The internet said flowers and dessert, so I brought both. The internet was right. Emma appeared from the living room, studying Victoria with the intense focus only children could manage. Victoria froze. Hi, Victoria said. You must be Emma. You're the one who melted a kettle. Lucas closed his eyes. Victoria laughed nervously. I am. It was a low point in my cooking career. Dad says you're bad at cooking. Emma, Lucas warned. He's not wrong, Victoria said. I once tried to make scrambled eggs and somehow set off the smoke detector. Emma's eyes went wide. How? I left the pan on too long while I answered an email. By the time I came back, there was smoke everywhere. That's terrible. It really was. Emma seemed to relax slightly. I'm good at cooking. I helped Dad make pancakes. That's impressive. I can't make pancakes either. Maybe I could teach you sometime. Victoria glanced at Lucas, then back at Emma. I'd like that. Dinner was chaotic in the way dinners with 6-year-olds always were. Emma talked nonstop about school and hamsters and her friend Mia's new bike. Victoria listened with genuine attention, asking questions that weren't condescending, treating Emma like a person instead of a child who needed managing. So you work with money? Emma asked at one point. Sort of. I help companies grow and improve. Like a gardener? Victoria paused. Actually, yeah, kind of like a gardener. Do you like it? Most days. Sometimes it's stressful. Dad gets stressed too. He makes this face. Emma scrunched up her features in an exaggerated impression that made Victoria laugh. I think I make that face too, Victoria said. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her room, which meant Victoria got a detailed tour of every stuffed animal, every drawing, every rock from Emma's collection that had special significance. Victoria listened to all of it, nodding seriously when Emma explained why this particular rock was important because it looked like it had a face. Lucas cleaned up the kitchen, listening to his daughter's voice carrying from the other room, and felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty. This was still complicated and risky, and could fall apart in a dozen different ways, but something close to hope. When Victoria came back to the kitchen, Emma trailing behind her, she looked less terrified. Emma showed me her dinosaur books, Victoria said. She's very knowledgeable about Triceratops. She's obsessed with Triceratops this week. Last week it was velociraptors. Velociraptors are cool, but Triceratops are cooler, Emma declared. They have 3 horns. Hard to argue with that logic, Victoria said. Emma looked between them. Are you going to stay for a while? We usually watch a movie before bed. Lucas started to say Victoria probably had to go, but Victoria spoke first. What movie? It's my turn to pick. Dad says I can't watch the scary dinosaur one anymore because I had nightmares, so probably something with singing. I like singing movies. Emma beamed and ran to set up the TV. Victoria turned to Lucas. Is this okay? She asked quietly. I don't want to overstep. You're not overstepping. She clearly likes you. She's being polite. Kids are polite to guests. Emma is many things. Polite to people she doesn't like is not one of them. They watched some animated movie about a kid who wanted to be a musician. Emma sat between them on the couch, narrating her favorite parts, even though they were seeing it for the first time. Halfway through, she leaned against Victoria's shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. Victoria looked at Lucas over Emma's head, eyes wide with something that might have been panic or wonder. Lucas smiled and mouthed, You're doing fine. By the time the movie ended, Emma was yawning. Lucas sent her to brush her teeth and get ready for bed. When she came back in her pajamas, she hugged Victoria goodnight. Can you come back? Emma asked. If your dad says it's okay. Emma looked at Lucas. Is it okay? Yeah, kiddo, it's okay. After Emma was in bed, after the second drink of water and third trip to the bathroom, and fourth reminder that yes, the nightlight was on, Lucas found Victoria standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot. You survived, he said. She's wonderful. She is. She's also usually more suspicious of new people. You must have made a good impression. I was terrified the entire time. You hit it well. Victoria turned to face him. This is real, isn't it? This isn't just some temporary thing we're both using to avoid our actual problems. Lucas crossed to her. It's real. At least it is for me. Even after today? Even knowing that Richard is going to make this as difficult as possible? Even after today. I lost half my authority because of us. You kept your company because you're brilliant at what you do. Richard just can't admit that. Victoria leaned her forehead against his chest. I'm scared I'm going to mess this up, that I'm going to hurt Emma, or disappoint you, or prove that I'm not cut out for this kind of life. Lucas wrapped his arms around her. You know what Emma asked me earlier? She asked if you were going to leave like her mother did. Victoria pulled back, stricken. What did you tell her? That you're not her mother, that I wouldn't bring someone into her life who might hurt her, that I trust you. Lucas, you can't promise her I'm not promising her anything except that I'm going to be honest and careful and make the best decisions I can. Same thing I've been doing since the day she was born. What if this doesn't work out? What if it does? They stood there for a moment, the apartment quiet around them. Emma asleep down the hall, the city humming beyond the windows. Then Victoria kissed him, slow and deliberate, like she was sealing something between them. I should go, she said. It's late. Or you could stay. Emma's here. I know, but you could stay anyway. On the couch. Or in my room. Just to sleep. I just want you here. Victoria looked toward the hallway where Emma's room was. What if she comes out and sees me? Then we tell her the truth, that sometimes grown-ups have sleepovers too. Is that what this is? A sleepover? I don't know what else to call it. I just know I don't want you driving home upset and exhausted. I want you here, where I know you're safe. Victoria's eyes were bright. Okay, but I'm taking the couch. The couch is terrible. You'll wake up with back pain. Then I'll suffer through it. I'm not sleeping in your bed with your daughter down the hall. That's a line I'm not ready to cross yet. Lucas found her blankets and a pillow. They sat on the terrible couch together, talking in whispers about nothing important until Victoria's eyes started closing. Lucas made her lie down, covered her with the blanket, and sat on the floor beside her. You don't have to stay, she murmured. I know. But you're going to anyway. Yeah. She reached down and took his hand. Thank you for tonight, for letting me meet Emma, for not running away when I told you about the board meeting. Thank you for not giving up. On us. On yourself. On any of it. Victoria fell asleep holding his hand. Lucas sat there on the floor, his back against the couch, and thought about how much had changed in 4 months. How he'd gone from barely surviving to fighting for something that mattered. How a woman who terrified corporate boards couldn't make tea without causing property damage. How his daughter had hugged someone new and asked them to come back. Around 2 in the morning, he finally stood up, careful not to wake Victoria, and went to check on Emma. She was sprawled across her bed, rabbit abandoned on the floor, one foot sticking out from under the covers. Lucas covered her foot, picked up the rabbit, and stood in her doorway watching her breathe. "I'm trying, kiddo," he whispered. "I'm really trying to get this right." Emma didn't wake up, didn't answer, just kept sleeping the deep sleep of children who trusted their father to protect them. Lucas hoped he wasn't about to prove that trust wrong. He was making coffee at 6 when Victoria appeared, her hair a mess, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Morning," she said. "Sleep okay?" "That couch is worse than you warned me about." "I told you." "You did." She sat at the kitchen table. "Is Emma awake yet?" "Not usually for another hour on school days." "I should go before she gets up." "Why?" "Because I don't want to confuse her." "She knows you stayed. She'll probably ask about it. We might as well tell her the truth." "Which is what?" Lucas poured her coffee. "That sometimes people who care about each other want to be near each other, even if it's just sleeping on a terrible couch." Victoria took the mug. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. We're the ones making it complicated." They sat in the quiet kitchen drinking coffee while the city woke up outside. Eventually Emma emerged, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and stopped when she saw Victoria. "You're still here," Emma said. "I am. I slept on the couch. Your dad was right. It's terrible." "Why didn't you sleep in a bed?" "Because that would have been weird," Victoria said. "Couches are for guests." Emma seemed to accept this logic. "Can you stay for breakfast? Dad makes good pancakes." Victoria looked at Lucas. He shrugged. "I'd love to stay for pancakes," Victoria said. They made breakfast together, Emma directing operations from her seat at the table, Lucas handling the actual cooking, Victoria on coffee duty. It was chaotic and normal, and felt like something they'd done 100 times before, even though it was the first. After breakfast, Victoria left to get ready for work. Emma hugged her goodbye again, less shy this time. "When can you come back?" Emma asked. "Whenever your dad says it's okay." "It's always okay," Emma declared, then ran off to get her backpack. Lucas walked Victoria to the door. "So that went well." "She's easier to please than a board of directors." "Most 6-year-olds are." Victoria kissed him quickly, aware Emma might appear at any moment. "I'll call you later, after I deal with Richard." "What's he going to do now?" "I don't know, but he got what he wanted yesterday. Co-director status, shared authority, his name on every major decision. He'll probably gloat for a while before making his next move." "And you?" "I'm going to do my job and prove that I'm still the best thing that company has, with or without Richard's approval." She left, and Lucas got Emma ready for school, and life returned to its normal rhythm. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Everything had shifted, realigned, become something new, Marcus called that afternoon. "I heard about the board meeting." "From who?" "From Richard. He called to gloat, said Victoria had been appropriately humbled." "That's not what happened." "I know. I talked to Victoria too. She filled me in on the real story." Marcus paused. "Are you sure about this man? Richard's not going to back down. He's going to keep pushing until something breaks." "Then something breaks. What if it's Victoria's company? What if it's not? What if she comes out of this stronger because she stopped letting people like Richard dictate her life?" "That's optimistic." "Maybe. But I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than cautious and miserable." Marcus sighed. "Just be careful. Both of you. Richard plays dirty when he needs to." Lucas thought about that warning for the rest of the day. What did playing dirty look like in Victoria's world? Leaked information? Manufactured scandals? He had no idea, which made it worse. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria called. "Richard scheduled a meeting with our biggest investor tomorrow," she said without preamble. "Without telling me, I found out from an assistant." "Can he do that?" "Technically, yes. As co-director, he can take investor meetings, but the protocol is to coordinate. This is him showing me he doesn't need my approval anymore." "What are you going to do?" "Show up anyway. Make it clear I'm still a critical part of every major decision, whether he likes it or not." "That's going to piss him off." "Good. I'm done letting him intimidate me." Lucas heard the steel in her voice and smiled despite everything. You know what Emma said today? What? She said you're nice, but you seem like you could be scary if someone made you mad. Victoria laughed. Is that a compliment? From Emma? Absolutely. She respects people who can be scary. They talked until midnight about strategy and Emma and the terrible couch that Victoria swore she'd never sleep on again. When they finally hung up, Lucas lay in bed thinking about how complicated his life had become and how he wouldn't change it even if he could. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Victoria fighting battles at work, Lucas managing deadlines and Emma's schedule, both of them stealing moments together whenever they could. Dinners at his apartment, late-night phone calls, weekend mornings when Emma was at sleepovers and they could pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. It wasn't easy. Richard kept pushing, kept testing Victoria's authority, kept making moves designed to undermine her. But Victoria pushed back harder, proving again and again that she was still the smartest person in every room she walked into. Emma adjusted to Victoria's presence in their lives with the flexibility of children. She stopped asking if Victoria was Lucas's girlfriend and just started including her in plans. Can Victoria come to my school play? Can Victoria help with my science project? Can Victoria teach me about dinosaurs in business? There are no dinosaurs in business, Lucas had said. But there should be, Emma had replied seriously. One Saturday in late November, Victoria showed up at the apartment with a gift for Emma, a book about a girl who wanted to be a paleontologist. Emma was thrilled. Lucas was concerned. You don't have to buy her things, he said while Emma was in her room reading. I know, I wanted to. She's going to get attached. Is that bad? Not if you're planning to stick around. Victoria looked at him. I'm planning to stick around. Even with everything that's happening at work, especially because of everything that's happening at work. You and Emma remind me there's more to life than winning against Richard. Lucas pulled her close. He's not going to stop, you know. I know, but neither am I. They were standing in the kitchen like that, Victoria's head on Lucas's chest, when Emma ran in. Dad, can Victoria stay for dinner again, please? Lucas looked at Victoria. She smiled. Yeah, kiddo, Lucas said. She can stay. And for the first time in weeks, everything felt almost normal, almost stable, almost like they might actually make this work. It wouldn't last. Lucas knew that. Complications were coming. Richard was planning something. The board was watching. There were still so many ways this could fall apart. But standing in his small kitchen with his daughter asking for seconds and Victoria laughing at something Emma said, Lucas decided to stop waiting for disaster and just live in the moment they had. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was real, and that was enough. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Lucas was dropping Emma at school. Victoria's name lit up his phone screen and he answered immediately, still parked in the drop-off zone. Richard leaked it, she said. No greeting, no preamble. Her voice was tight. Leaked what? Us. There's an article in the Seattle Business Journal. Billionaire investors' romance raises questions about focus. They've got photos of us at that fundraiser outside my building, at the diner that night. Someone's been following us. Lucas felt his stomach drop. How bad is it? Bad enough. They're questioning whether my personal life is affecting my professional judgment, asking if the board should be concerned about divided attention. Richard's quoted saying he has full confidence in my abilities, but understands stakeholder concerns about leadership stability. That's political speak for throwing me under the bus while maintaining plausible deniability. Yeah, I know. Victoria's breath came sharp over the line. The board wants an emergency meeting this afternoon. What do you need from me? I don't know, to not exist for the next few hours? To make this easier? She laughed, but it sounded broken. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. It's okay to be angry. I'm not angry, I'm terrified. Because this time Richard isn't just questioning my focus. He's making it personal, and personal attacks work. Lucas watched other parents drop off their kids, normal people with normal problems. Do you want me to come with you to the meeting? No, that would just prove his point. She paused. But I want you to know that whatever happens today, this wasn't a mistake. You weren't a mistake. Stop talking like it's over. I'm being realistic. The board doesn't care about my happiness. They care about returns and reputation and not having their managing director become a tabloid story. Then remind them why they hired you. Show them the numbers, the success, everything you've built. Make them see that your personal life hasn't changed any of that. Richard will argue it has, that I've been less aggressive, more cautious, that I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Are you the same person you were a year ago? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. No, I'm not. I'm happier. I'm more grounded. I actually sleep occasionally, but I don't know if that translates to being a better investor or just a weaker one. You know the answer to that. Do I? Victoria, you've made every right call for 5 years. One of those calls was deciding to have a life outside work. Trust that instinct the same way you trust your business instincts. After they hung up, Lucas sat in his car and pulled up the article on his phone. There he was, captured in a dozen candid moments he hadn't known were being photographed, walking with Victoria outside the museum, holding her hand in the sculpture garden. The diner photo was the worst, both of them visible through the window, Victoria laughing at something he'd said, looking nothing like the untouchable billionaire her public image suggested. The article was careful, professionally worded, but the implications were clear. Victoria Hale, known for ruthless focus and calculated decisions, was now distracted by a relationship with a struggling freelance designer and single father. Questions about judgment, concerns about priorities, speculation about whether personal complications were affecting professional performance. Lucas read it twice, feeling sicker each time. Then he called Marcus. I saw it, Marcus said immediately. Richard's behind this. Had to be. How do I fix it? You can't. This is Victoria's fight now. There has to be something I can do. There is. You can be there when she gets home. You can remind her why she chose this, and you can trust that she's strong enough to handle Richard. What if she's not? What if the board sides with him? Then she'll figure out her next move, but she won't do it alone. That's the whole point, right? She's not alone anymore. Lucas went home and tried to work. Couldn't focus. Tried to clean. Couldn't settle. Finally, he just sat at his kitchen table and waited, checking his phone every few minutes for updates that didn't come. Emma's school called at 1. She'd fallen on the playground and scraped her knee. Nothing serious, but could someone pick her up? She was pretty upset. Lucas was there in 15 minutes. Emma limped out to the car, her knee bandaged, tears still wet on her cheeks. It really hurts, Dad, she said. I know, kiddo. We'll get you home and put ice on it. They were halfway back to the apartment when Emma said, Is Victoria okay? Lucas glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Why do you ask? You have your worried face. You only make that face when something's wrong with grown-up stuff, or when something's wrong with Victoria, 6 years old and already too perceptive. Lucas wondered when that had happened. She's having a hard day at work. Because of the thing in the news? Lucas nearly swerved. How do you know about that? Mia's mom was talking about it with another mom at drop-off. I heard them say Victoria's name and something about a boyfriend. Are you Victoria's boyfriend? This was not the conversation Lucas had planned to have while driving, with Emma injured and Victoria facing down her board. But kids didn't wait for convenient timing. Yeah, he said. I am. Is that why people are being mean to her? Some people think she should only focus on work, that having a boyfriend is a distraction. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, that's stupid. Everyone needs people who love them. Otherwise, what's the point? Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds. Lucas felt something tight loosen in his chest. You're pretty smart, you know that? I know. Can we get ice cream? My knee hurts and ice cream helps. They got ice cream. Lucas let Emma have 2 scoops even though it was a school day and she hadn't eaten lunch yet. They sat in the shop and Emma talked about her day between bites, and Lucas tried not to think about what was happening in Victoria's boardroom. His phone rang at 3:30. Victoria. Can you talk? She asked. Yeah, hold on. He walked outside, leaving Emma with her ice cream and strict instructions not to move. What happened? I'm still employed. Barely. Victoria sounded exhausted. They agreed to keep me on as managing director without additional oversight. Richard's co-director status is being reviewed pending an audit of recent decisions. That sounds like a win. It's a conditional win. They want quarterly reviews of my performance for the next year. Any sign of declining returns or questionable judgment, and they can remove me without cause. But you kept your position. I kept my job. I lost their trust. That's worse in some ways. She paused. I told them about you. Really told them. Said you weren't a distraction or a liability. That you were someone who made me better at seeing what actually mattered. That if they couldn't accept that I'm a whole person with a personal life, then maybe this wasn't the right place for me anymore. Lucas felt his heart hammering. What did they say? Nothing. They just sat there looking uncomfortable. Then the chairman said they'd take my comments under advisement and moved on to the audit discussion. She laughed without humor. I basically dared them to fire me and they just ignored it. Because they know you're too valuable to lose. Or because they're waiting to see if I hang myself with quarterly reviews. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you're brilliant and driven and you've proven yourself 100 times over. This is just Richard being threatened by someone who won't play his games anymore. Victoria was quiet. Then, Emma's school called me. Lucas blinked. What? After they called you about her knee. Someone put me down as an emergency contact. I didn't even know until my phone rang, and it was the school nurse asking if I could pick up Emma Reed. I didn't put you down. I don't even know how that would... Lucas stopped. Marcus. He must have updated my forms the last time he did pickup. The nurse was very apologetic when I explained I wasn't family. But Lucas, for a second there, when she said Emma was hurt, I panicked. Like real can't-breathe panic. Because the idea of something happening to her... Victoria's voice cracked. I care about her. I didn't expect to care this much, but I do. She cares about you too. She asked about you today. Said people being mean to you was stupid because everyone needs people who love them. She said that? Word for word. She's 6. She's smart. Victoria exhaled slowly. Can I come over tonight? I just want to be somewhere that feels real. We're having leftover spaghetti, and Emma's going to want to show you her scraped knee. Still want to come? More than anything, Victoria arrived at 6, still in her work clothes, looking like she'd been through a war. Emma launched herself at her the moment she walked in, showing off her bandaged knee with pride. The nurse said I was very brave, Emma announced. I'm sure you were, Victoria said, crouching down to examine the bandage. Does it still hurt? A little, but Dad got me ice cream, so it's better now. Ice cream is excellent medicine. They ate dinner at the kitchen table, Emma narrating some elaborate story about a class project involving volcanoes. Victoria listened with the same attention she probably gave investor presentations, asking questions about baking soda ratios and construction techniques. After dinner, Emma wanted to show Victoria her volcano model. They spent an hour in Emma's room, Lucas listening from the kitchen as his daughter explained her vision, and Victoria offered suggestions that somehow made building a papier-mâché mountain sound like a strategic business decision. When Emma finally went to bed, after the usual negotiations about bedtime and one more story, Victoria and Lucas sat on the terrible couch together. Thank you, Victoria said. For what? For letting me be part of this. Your life? Emma's life. For not deciding I was too complicated to be worth it. You are too complicated. I'm choosing you anyway. She kissed him, and it felt different than before. Less desperate, more certain, like they'd both made a choice and were committed to seeing it through. I'm going to make this work, Victoria said. The company, the board, Richard, I'm going to prove I can have both. A career and a life. You and Emma and still be good at what I do. I know you will. How are you so sure? Because you're the most determined person I've ever met, and because you've already proven it. You've been balancing both for weeks now, and your numbers are still strong. Richard's attack wasn't about performance. It was about control. Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. I've been thinking about what happens next, after the quarterly reviews, after I prove Richard wrong, what our life actually looks like long term. And I want to move. Not far. Just out of downtown. Somewhere with actual space, maybe a yard, somewhere Emma could have a bigger room and you could have a real office and I could learn to cook without setting off smoke alarms. Lucas pulled back to look at her. You're talking about moving in together. Eventually, yeah. Not right now. That's too fast, but eventually. Is that crazy? Probably. But so is everything else we've done. Emma would have to be okay with it. Emma asked me last week if you were going to be her stepmom someday. Victoria's eyes went wide. What did you tell her? That I didn't know. That we were figuring it out. That she'd be the first to know when we decided anything. Lucas took Victoria's hand. But for what it's worth, I'd like to figure it out with you. Even knowing my job is always going to be complicated, that there will be board meetings and investor drama and people like Richard trying to tear us apart, even knowing all that. Why? Because I spent 6 years surviving instead of living. You reminded me there's a difference. I don't want to go back to just surviving. They sat there in the quiet apartment, Emma asleep down the hall, the city lights visible through the window. It wasn't a perfect moment. Victoria still had quarterly reviews to pass. Richard still had power. There were still 100 ways this could get harder before it got easier. But they were choosing it anyway. Choosing each other, choosing the complications, choosing to build something real instead of something safe. 3 months later, Victoria walked into a board meeting with documentation proving every decision she'd made since the article came out. Her returns were up 8%. 2 of her portfolio companies had successful exits. She'd identified and acquired a promising biotech startup that everyone else had passed on. The quarterly review took 15 minutes. The board approved her continued leadership unanimously. Richard wasn't even present. He'd taken a leave of absence 2 weeks earlier, citing personal reasons. Word around the office was that several investors had quietly expressed concerns about his judgment after the leaked article backfired. Victoria called Lucas from her car afterward. "I'm free," she said. "Really free." They dissolved the quarterly review requirement, said my performance spoke for itself. "Congratulations. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You're brilliant." "I'm brilliant at work. You taught me I could be brilliant at life, too." That weekend, they took Emma house hunting. "Just looking," they told her. "Just seeing what was out there." Emma had opinions about every place they visited. This one's yard was too small. That one didn't have good hiding spots. This other one smelled weird. They found a house in Wallingford with 3 bedrooms, a backyard with actual trees, and a kitchen big enough for all of them to cook in together. It needed work. The paint was peeling, the hardwood scratched, the appliances ancient, but it had good bones and enough space to grow into. "What do you think?" Lucas asked Emma as they stood in the empty living room. Emma looked around carefully. "Does this mean Victoria's going to live with us? Would that be okay with you?" Emma considered this with the gravity of someone making a major life decision. "Will she still be bad at cooking?" "Probably," Victoria said. "But I could get better. With practice." "And will you still come to my school stuff and help with projects?" "Absolutely." "And will you love my dad even when he's grumpy in the mornings?" Victoria glanced at Lucas, her eyes bright. "Especially when he's grumpy in the mornings." Emma nodded once, decisively. "Okay then, I like this house." They bought it, spent weekends painting walls and refinishing floors, Emma helping in ways that mostly involved getting paint in her hair and asking 1,000 questions. Victoria learned to use power tools with the same focus she brought to financial analysis. Lucas taught her to cook simple meals without causing disasters, celebrating when she successfully made scrambled eggs without triggering any alarms. On moving day, boxes everywhere and Emma directing traffic like a tiny construction foreman, Victoria pulled Lucas aside. "I never thought I'd have this," she said. "A home that actually feels like home. A family that chose me instead of tolerating me. A life that's messy and complicated and real." Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. Marcus came by that evening to help unpack, bringing pizza and beer and unsolicited advice about furniture placement. He found Lucas in what would become his office, surrounded by boxes of design supplies. "You did it," Marcus said. "You actually made this work." "We made it work. Barely." "But you did. Against all the odds, against Richard, against everyone who said Victoria's world and yours couldn't mix. You proved them wrong." Lucas looked out the window at the backyard, where Emma was showing Victoria the best climbing tree. "We just decided the odds didn't matter as much as the trying. That's the most disgustingly optimistic thing I've heard you say in 10 years. "I know, it's terrible." They both laughed, and Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm happy for you, man. For all of you." That night, after Emma was asleep in her new room and the boxes were mostly unpacked, and the house felt lived in instead of empty, Victoria and Lucas sat on the back porch watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, "about what all this means. The last 6 months, everything we fought through to get here." "What does it mean?" "That maybe success isn't about having everything figured out. Maybe it's about finding people who make the mess worth it." She turned to look at him. I spent 10 years building a perfect career and a perfect reputation, and I was miserable. Now I have a scraped-up house and a job that's always going to be challenging, and a 6-year-old who asked me this morning if I knew the scientific name for Triceratops. And I've never been happier. Lucas took her hand. Triceratops horridus, by the way. Emma quizzed me last week. Of course she did. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from knowing someone well enough that words weren't always necessary. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Inside, the refrigerator hummed, normal sounds of a normal life. You know what I learned? Lucas said. All those years I spent surviving, I thought I was doing the right thing. Keeping everything simple, avoiding complications, making sure Emma had stability, even if it meant I had nothing else. But I was teaching her the wrong lesson. I was teaching her that wanting things for yourself was selfish, that happiness was something you sacrificed for responsibility. And now I'm teaching her that you can be responsible and still choose joy. That complications aren't always bad. That sometimes the messy, uncertain, risky choice is the one that makes everything else make sense. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. Think we can actually pull this off? The house, the blended life, making it all work long term? Honestly, I have no idea. We'll probably mess up 100 different ways. Emma will have moments where she resents sharing me. You'll have board meetings that make you question everything. I'll have days where I feel inadequate in your world. It's not going to be smooth. But we'll figure it out. Because that's what people do when they care enough to try. A light turned on in Emma's window. She appeared, pressing her face against the glass and waving at them. Victoria waved back. She's supposed to be asleep, Lucas said without moving. She's excited about the new house. Let her have tonight. Lucas stood and stretched. I should go tuck her in again. I'll come with you. They went inside together, climbing the stairs to Emma's room where she was definitely not asleep, despite promising she would be. She was sitting up in bed, her stuffed rabbit in her lap, looking out at the unfamiliar shadows of a new room. Can't sleep? Victoria asked. It's too different. I keep thinking about our old apartment. Lucas sat on the edge of her bed. Different isn't always bad, kiddo. I know, but it's still weird. Emma looked at Victoria. Are you really going to live here now? Like, all the time? All the time. Is that still okay with you? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was real. That you weren't going to leave like Mom did. Victoria sat on the other side of Emma's bed. I'm not your mom, Emma, and I can't promise that life won't change or that everything will always be perfect. But I can promise that I choose to be here, that I care about you and your dad, that I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. Emma thought about this. Then she held out her rabbit. Mr. Rabbit wants you to stay. Victoria took the offered rabbit with appropriate seriousness. Well, if Mr. Rabbit says so, then I guess it's decided. Emma smiled and lay back down. Lucas covered her with blankets while Victoria set the rabbit carefully beside her. Night, kiddo, Lucas said. Night, Dad. Night, Victoria. Good night, Emma. They left her door cracked open, the hallway light spilling in just enough to keep the shadows friendly. Downstairs, they finished unpacking the kitchen, working in quiet coordination, occasionally bumping into each other in the unfamiliar space. Around midnight, Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and silenced it. Work? Lucas asked. Can be handled tomorrow. You sure? I know how important. It's important. But so is this. I'm learning to tell the difference. Lucas kissed her, tasting possibility and uncertainty and commitment all at once. I love you, he said, meaning it completely, terrified and certain in equal measure. Victoria smiled. I love you too. Even though you're terrible at hanging pictures straight, and you make the worst coffee I've ever tasted, and you stress about everything. My coffee is great. Your coffee is tragic, but I love you anyway. They finished unpacking the kitchen and went to bed in their new room, in their new house, in the life they'd chosen despite every logical reason not to. Lucas lay awake for a while, listening to Victoria breathe beside him, and Emma shift in her sleep down the hall, and thought about how none of this made sense on paper. A billionaire investor and a struggling freelance designer. A woman who couldn't cook and a man who barely kept his head above water. A relationship that had survived board meetings and leaked articles and the weight of everyone's expectations. A blended family built from loneliness and hope and the stubborn belief that choosing each other mattered more than choosing easy. It shouldn't have worked. By every reasonable measure, it should have fallen apart months ago. But here they were anyway, messy and imperfect and trying. And maybe that was the whole point. Maybe life wasn't about avoiding complications or finding the perfect path. Maybe it was about choosing your complications, deciding which mess was worth fighting through, finding people who made even the hard days feel worthwhile. Lucas had spent 6 years keeping his life small and manageable, thinking that was what Emma needed. What he'd actually needed was to remember how to want something for himself, how to build instead of just survive, how to let someone see him completely, the tired, broke, uncertain parts, and choose him anyway. Victoria had spent 10 years proving she didn't need anyone, building an empire that demanded everything and gave back only success. What she'd actually needed was to remember that success without connection was just expensive loneliness, that being seen as powerful mattered less than being known as human. They'd both been hiding behind different versions of safety. He'd hidden behind responsibility. She'd hidden behind achievement. It took meeting each other to realize that safety was just another word for stuck. The next morning, Emma woke them up at 6, bouncing on their bed and demanding pancakes in the new kitchen. Victoria tried to help and nearly burned them, which made Emma laugh so hard she got hiccups. Lucas fixed the pancakes while Victoria handled coffee duty, and they ate breakfast in their new dining room with boxes still stacked in corners and nothing quite where it belonged. "This is perfect," Emma declared through a mouthful of pancakes. "It's a mess," Lucas said. "It's perfect because it's ours," Emma corrected. "All of ours." Lucas looked at Victoria across the table. She smiled, her hair messy from sleep, wearing one of his old shirts, looking nothing like the polished billionaire the world knew and everything like the person he'd chosen. "Yeah," he said, "it's perfect." And it was. Not because everything was figured out or because the complications had magically disappeared. Richard was still lurking somewhere in Victoria's professional life. Lucas still had deadlines and client stress. Emma would still have moments of doubt and adjustment. The house needed work. The finances were complicated. The future remained uncertain. But they were facing it together, building something real in the mess, choosing each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That was the thing nobody told you about love, Lucas thought. The movies made it seem like the happy ending was the part where you finally got together. But really, getting together was just the beginning. The real story was everything that came after, the daily choice to stay, to fight, to build a life that honored both people instead of asking one to disappear into the other's world. Victoria had her company. Lucas had his work. Emma had her school and friends and dinosaur obsessions. They all had their own lives, their own identities, their own paths. But they'd found a way to walk those paths together, to let their worlds overlap and collide and create something new in the intersection. It wasn't always smooth. It would never be simple. But it was theirs, imperfect and real and worth every complication it took to build it. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.